Good evening, everyone. We're live broadcasting September 5th, 2015. Today, as you can see, I'm alone. I did not invite Robin to this hangout. But there was a reason for not inviting Robin to this hangout. Because here's Robin. You got a mic there. So everybody say hello to Robin. And you can sit closer. I moved that chair is a little tough to move. So yeah, we're still both here, except now we're both really here. And we are ready to go. Ryan says, hi, Robin.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, everyone.
Here's the mic. Yeah.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Is this working?
Yes. So today we have a quote. Are you able to read that for us?
Yes.
You have it there. Today we just got back from the new building. No pictures yet. Suppose we should take some pictures for everybody, right?
A video.
Video. And Robin brought a desk, a bookshelf, a whole bunch of stuff that we have to put together. I don't know what it is all. What else? So tomorrow we're going to move all this computer stuff. And then, well, anyway, it's all, tomorrow, but then we'll do that some in the morning, and then we have our volunteer meeting at 12. And Visuddhimagga and Pali at 1 and 2 o'clock. And then we'll be back here again at 9. Right. Anyway, you probably knew all that. So let's get on with the show. What's the quote?
Possessed of two things in this very life, one lives in much ease and happiness, firmly directed toward the ending of the defilements. What two? Being moved by a sense of urgency when it is appropriate and having a clear goal. Sadhu.
Problem is, it's not, this mic is different for the audio. That's okay. All right, so this is from the Itivuttaka. And again, I get the feeling that he picked the less quotable part, but I guess it's, as prose, he's not so interested in the poetry, because what he says the Buddha says right after that is quite, I don't know, maybe it's more difficult to translate into English. Another thing is he uses a really strange sort of translation, given that it is actually, these two things are related to each other, and that doesn't come across, right? A sense of urgency when it is appropriate and having a clear goal. There's no, that isn't even exactly what the Buddha is saying. Let's find out what he's saying. We will go to the Pali. Hey, do you guys want a quick Pali lesson? Why not, huh? Let's see. Okay, now everyone gets to see the digital Pali reader. Let's see about making it. That work? Why didn't that work? All right, just a second. Oh, there we are. Okay. Yeah, the full thing. Okay, so this is the Itivuttaka, right? Itivuttaka Dukkha Nipata. And here's what the Buddha says: Dvihi bhikkhave dhammehi samanagato bhikkhu. A bhikkhu who is endowed with two dhammas, bhikkhus, titeva dhamme sukha somanasa bahulo viharati, dwells full of happiness. Sukha would be physical happiness, somanasa is mental happiness. Titeva dhamme means invisible reality, which means right here and now, basically. And ja, here's a ja, and his or her yoni. Yoni actually means womb, but here I guess it means nature or core being, right? Yoni is a complicated word. His being is arada hoti, asavanankayaya, is fixed, basically, bent upon the destruction of the taints. So far so good. I think he captured that with his translation. But then he says, Katamehi dvihi, which two? Sangvejaniyesu dhanesu samvejanena. Endowed with, this means endowed with sangveja. Sangveja means agitation or stirred, right? What did he say? What is the translation? He is moved, right? Moved by things that are worthy of moving one. Moved by things that are moving. Agitated by things that are a cause for agitation. Means stirred, you could say. So like death, for example. People who are stirred by death because death is something that is stirring. So far I think he's still good, but then he misses it with the second one, because this here, samviga, means one who is agitated. It's the same word as these other two. This one is stirred by things. Tana means place. It's figuratively means a place, but a thing, which are cause for, and the niya means cause for sangweja. So it's sangweja by things that are a cause for sangweja. So stirred by things that are a cause for being stirred. And this means being stirred, right? So it's the same word. Being stirred, padana means effort, really, right? Strives, yoniso padanena, yoniso to his core, from his core kind of thing. He says wisely. It really means from the core, to the core. Puts out effort wholeheartedly. Or you could say, it's often used to mean wisely, so it could mean judiciously, uses proper and wise energy, wise effort. But that's what it means. Being stirred puts out effort. And the Buddha uses these two phrases often. The people who are stirred by things that are worthy of stirring, that are stirring. And the Buddha, I believe, I've read a quote elsewhere where the Buddha said, because I don't think I could find the actual quote. I remember looking for it, but, or maybe I did anyway. So just a quote that stuck with me. Stirred by, few are the people, few are the beings who are stirred by those things that are stirring. But even fewer are those having been stirred, having become agitated, actually do yonisopadana, actually put out effort from the heart. Right? So there you go. Pali lesson. Why am I screen sharing again? Stop. Gonna stop? How do I close that? All right. Okay. Are we good? We're good. No, we're not good. What's wrong with you? Oh, okay. So the meaning is, this is a pair that the Buddha uses often. The being stirred by things that are stirring, and having been stirred, putting out effort to do things that are necessary. And that's important to you see how he's kind of lost it with his translation. It's important. The connection is important, because some people do become agitated and think, yeah, I should go and meditate, yeah, I should practice morality, yeah, I should do good things, I should work, but they don't ever do it. You see, I mean, it's much easier to say I will, I will, I will, than to actually do it. And that's what the meaning is here. So to actually live in ease, live at ease with happiness, firmly directed towards the right path, the ending of defilements, you need both. You need both. You could say the second one is enough, but the second one only comes from the first one. So the point is, it's not enough to be stirred. You have to actually put out effort. So there's our quote for today. And a free Pali lesson to boot. Not too much to say about it, I suppose, besides that. But it's a good quote. But what I wanted to say is he missed so how about another Pali lesson? No, I won't put you through that. But I'm going to read the Pali to you. Because right after that, because this is the Itivuttaka, which has a lot of verses in it. And so right after that, he has a verse for us that's poetic. Sangvejaniya thanesu sangvijjeteva pandito. A wise person should become stirred by things that are stirring. Atapi nipako bhikkhu panyaya samavekiya. Atapi, with effort, nipako, a wise or discerning bhikkhu, panyaya samvekiya. Samavekiya. Sama, even, Vikya, Vakati, should look at, right? Consider. A wise being should look upon, be observant. Samavikya means to be observant but level-headed, to observe equanimously with wisdom. Atapi nipako bhikkhu panyaya samavikya. That's a good word, samavikya. Means to observe objectively. With sama means, it's like the English word same, but it means level. It's like samadhi. It's where the word samadhi comes from, to be, or samahita. Evang viharya tapi santavuti anudato. Dwelling thus with effort, again atapi, santavuti anudato. Santavuti means behaving peacefully, right, with a peaceful conduct. Anudato, uninflated, or inflated means like puffed up, boastful, sort of full of oneself. So not that. So humble, basically. Ceto samattamanyutto kayang dukkasa papune. It might have sounded more poetic if I hadn't torn it to pieces, but Ceto samattamanyutto means to be connected, practice connected with, let's say, put out effort for mental tranquility. Kayang dukkasa papune. Such a person attains the ending of suffering. So destruction of suffering. Yeah, so that's the poetry. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Not about the quote. Is it okay to...
I think you need the mic.
Oh. Sorry, I have a question, not about the quote. Is that okay?
Yep.
So people have been dying quite a bit lately, you mentioned. And there's been a lot of funerals.
Today, another funeral.
And you mentioned that, monks aren't priests. They don't do priestly things. But what would a monk do at a Buddhist funeral? What's the appropriate thing for a monk to do?
Honestly, I'm not sure that we should even be going to Buddhist funerals. I mean, what business is that? Is it of ours when people die?
I don't know.
It's not really. I mean, that's the point. That's why I've been grumbling about this, is that I don't see why we're going at all. This morning we went and got fed, and I mean, that's really our role. Is people see, I always, again and again, I repeat three things. When a person dies, one, you should not grieve. And so this morning I led them through a meditation, to help them be mindful of the sadness. I mean, most of them are like hungover and whatever. But number two, you should do good deeds on behalf of the person who's passed away in their name. And number three, you should reflect on your own death. So I go through these, explain them all. But number two is a big one. You want to feel good about, you want to come to terms with this person's death. Doing good deeds in their name is a great way to do that. So inviting the monks for lunch, that's the purpose of it. And people don't, I think, get that. They kind of do it because this person has died. What should we do? What does the tradition say? And so it's just basically what the tradition says. I mean, I shouldn't paint everyone with the same brush. There's a lot of people who do understand this, but I don't get the general sense that the family is really in tune with that. Or it's maybe not stressed enough anyway. But that's the point. So the role of the monks, and it's not even, the point is, that's not why we ordain as monks. We don't ordain as monks to do weddings and funerals and births and whatever. We ordain to leave the world and to teach meditation at most, right? To teach Buddhism. So our first role is as a recipient of gifts because they want to do something good, so they support Buddhism. That's a good thing. Second, our role is to teach. So you could argue that we are invited to the funeral to teach, and that's really how it happened today, right? No, I think it would have worked better if we had just gone for lunch and I'd given a talk and that was it. We don't have to go to the funeral hall. We don't have to go to the crematorium, but we did both. We went to the funeral hall and we sit through, listening to this person's life history. Someone's telling this person, and it's like, why are we listening? Why? This isn't about us. We're not a part of this family. I didn't even know the guy. One thing you could argue is this guy was a monk before at our monastery here, apparently for a month. So that was, I think, a big reason for the head monk here actually gave a talk about him, or like gave a part of his history, talked about him after I gave my talk. But then after that, then we sat around waiting, and then we drove all the way across town to the crematorium. And then why are we at the crematorium? And then we did more chanting, the same chanting. We did the same chanting 3 times. And it feels kind of like we're deluding people, because we all know that it doesn't mean much to do this chanting. It's just kind of, anyway. I guess I'm jaded and cynical. But what is a monk's role? I think I can think of 2 things. One is, to be a recipient of their good deeds, and 2, to teach them. So it's good that they got a teaching and that we sat down and meditated together. I think there's no question that that's proper and that's something they should do when someone dies. I just feel that we get a little too involved.
I thank you for explaining it, because I really didn't understand that. I'm newer to Buddhism, just a few years, and it's hard to understand these nuances. How things are so different unless somebody tells you right out. So that was interesting. Thank you.
I mean, the thing is to remember what the definition of a monk is. Monk, as I said, comes from mono, which means alone. The idea of a monk is to stay alone, and that's really what we are. If you read the Buddha's teaching, there are no Buddhist priests. Buddhism wasn't a priestly religion. It wasn't about taking care of people and fitting in with society. It was a radical renunciation of the world. And that's really the core of Buddhism. So a Buddhist priest is not really what the Buddha had in mind. if you're helping people, there's a lot of talk about teaching and helping people, right? But you got to be clear what is meant by that. Getting involved in worldly things is quite dangerous. I mean, if it were right, it wouldn't be dangerous. If that were the goal of Buddhism, to help the world and to make life more livable but for people, like to fit in with society and make society a better place, then it would be fine. But it's quite dangerous because it's not. And then when monks do undertake those activities, then monks who don't undertake those activities are frowned upon or are criticized for not. And you've got this in the Vinaya. It talks about this, where monks would follow after the whims of lay people, and then another monk came and he just did meditation all the time, and they said, what use is this monk? What good is he? And he was an arahant. So they were criticizing this guy for, he was, when he walked, he would walk downcast and had a peaceful countenance, but they thought, wait, he doesn't even say hello to us, he's not engaging. And so yeah, something we have to be clear what to expect from monks. Are not civil servants, and in many cultures now they've become civil servants, basically. I think that's the right term, like people who work for, like, public servants kind of thing.
I think we read a lot about that in the Visuddhimagga, all the different things that monks weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
Run errands and do messages and all those kind of things.
I was invited to teach in California a second time. I went the first time, and it was so successful that they invited me to come back the next time. And they had also supported me a lot, and they had done a great thing on my behalf. They had supported me and really helped me out. So when it came time to go again, my teacher wouldn't let me go, and so we had to beg and plead. And I don't think he ever really gave me permission to go, but I went anyway. Not proud of that, but I said, look, these people have been so helpful to me, I can't say no to them. And he said, well, you pay them back by practicing well. Rather than go and teach them. That's a good point, but that's a very Buddhist point. Is that no, it's not gratitude to go and work for them. It's gratitude for you to practice well on your own. Okay, more questions? Are you got them on there, huh? Are you on Wi-Fi?
Not at the moment.
We shut down the Wi-Fi.
That's okay. At what point is it useful to discontinue as a regular vipassana practice to temporarily take up other kinds of meditations to combat certain defilements, such as practicing mindfulness of death to overcome lethargy? Or is vipassana meditation, as described in your booklet, ultimately enough to overcome any defilement? Thank you, Bhante.
I think ultimately, yes, it's enough, but that's like ultimately, right? In the meantime, the rest of them are protective. It's not that, if your vipassana is going well, you don't say, okay, that's enough of that, let me try another meditation. It's when your vipassana is not going well for some reason or another, when you feel you just can't practice vipassana because you're too angry or because you're too lazy or so on, then you can use these other ones to bolster your practice and get you back on track. That's more how it is. They're not any of them necessary, but they're all useful.
How do the stages of knowledge work? For instance, is dissolution something that you pass through every time you sit down to meditate? And do you have to pass through it on the way to cessation? I don't understand this in the context of the Venerable Sariputta realizing cessation upon hearing a teaching.
Yeah, the stages of knowledge are not something you should think about. They're best, mostly. I mean, unless you are someone who's gone through a course with a teacher based on the stages of knowledge. If you haven't done that yet, unless you're really on your own and don't have the opportunity to do such a course, but are dedicated to the practice, then and only then should you really worry about the stages of knowledge. So if that's the case, the problem is you easily fall into this kind of confusion about the stages, not really getting what is meant. It's much better to have a teacher. I'm hesitant to exactly answer your question because, well, because this is a public forum, and because even for you, I don't know. It's easy to, the more you know about the stages of knowledge without actually having gone through a course based on them, the more confused you can get. It actually doesn't help to know more about them always. So, I mean, it could benefit you, but I'm hesitant to actually get into that sort of stuff. I'm more cautious. Can I give you some general advice about it? Let me think. Still the solution. Well, the stages of knowledge, yes, you do have to go through them all, but it's more a course based on them is more about stretching them out and going over them repeatedly, say for a day. So you spend a day on each stage of knowledge. But that does. But Sariputta went through them all in a few moments. So the course is more about going over them in order to be clear about them. I mean, the Visuddhimagga, which is really the text that talks about them and sets the basis for such a course. The whole book is all about repetition. What do you call pedantry? Is the word? I don't know. I mean, being structured and methodical. Sometimes overly so, it seems, but it's for the purpose of becoming a master at these things. I mean, Sariputta was just winging it. He didn't need all of this structure. For the rest of us, we can't just sit down and like Sariputta and become enlightened, or fan the Buddha and become an arahat. We need the structure. I mean, the structure makes it far more certain that you're going to go the right way. That's about it. So I hope that, I don't want to get too much, and I don't want people thinking, I don't want to talk too much about the stages of knowledge, because they're really something more for a teacher to use, and doesn't even have to tell their students about them, but to use in determining the state of the student's practice and in leading the student through the practice. Okay, more questions?
Yes. How can we know if we are making the right effort on one task?
How can we know if we are making right effort? Right effort is specific. Right effort is specifically the activity that you put forth, the effort that you put forth to remove defilements that have arisen, prevent defilements from arising, cultivate wholesome states that haven't arisen, and maintain wholesome states that have arisen. It's a description of an aspect of the practice, or a quality of the practice, quality of right practice, whereby one is perfectly in line with wholesomeness and moving completely away from unwholesomeness. So how would you know if you're practicing right effort? If there's less unwholesomeness and more wholesomeness. If your mind is cultivating wholesomeness and moving away from unwholesomeness.
Bhante, why did you do more than just teach? I get pulled into things that I don't want or think I should do. So this question is more about me seeking an answer for me.
I don't get it more than just teach. Do I do more than just, yeah, well, I do some things more. I try different things personally, but okay, let's relate it more to you. Yes, it's easy to get pulled into things. I mean, I think one advice I'd give is don't be afraid to stop doing something when you realize that it's more effort than it's worth. I think that's something that I've had to do. Realize that, okay, wait, this is less benefit, more effort. Right? But some things are very little effort and a lot of benefit. I mean, I think this website is a good example. Building this website wasn't teaching, but the effort that went into it wasn't substantial compared to the benefit that comes from it. And it was interesting, this conversation I had with someone who was quite helpful, and he wanted me to do it the right way. Why make the website yourself? We've got all these tools that will do it for you. But I've been there, done that, and that is more effort than it's worth to me. I mean, to me, this was, we want this, let's do it, and then we can just make it do exactly what we want. And so I went ahead and did it.
And thank you for making it.
But I don't know if that completely answers the question. Getting pulled into things, be careful not to judge too quickly, because sometimes you do something and then you feel guilty about it. And guilt can be a killer as well. And sometimes it's not as bad as you think. But be flexible. Don't be stubborn and say, well, I started it, I have to finish it. I mean, I'm that way. I don't think you have to finish things if they turn out to be wasteful. You have to be flexible. And, the path isn't always straight. Sometimes it's trial and error and spending a lot of time trying to figure out the right path for you. And that's how I've seen it.
How about if other people are kind of pulling you into their things, wanting you to fix their problems and get involved and be compassionate?
Don't fall into the compassion trap. I mean, to some extent, don't fall into the compassion trap, because to some extent you have to do, like, why I go to these funerals, a lot of it is just, it's more effort than it's worth to say no. If I said no, someone would be angry at me, right? And I think that's wrong. I think if people want you to do something, I feel comfortable arguing and saying, no, this is a waste of time, but I'm not going to say no and refuse to go. Tomorrow we have a lunch, we're going to lunch, and I don't want to go to lunch. We've got work to do tomorrow, but there's a lunch done. And I mean, actually, it's ridiculous because they're feeding me. Why am I not going? But it just made me think about it. When I thought about it, it was, he would, the head monk really wanted me to go, and there's no way that I could get out of this. And that's the point. I think we cross that line too often. That's something you have to learn to do. Don't cross that line. You can say no, but when it comes to the point where saying no is really going to hurt someone, so you end up being quite compassionate, and you end up helping people a lot more than you would think, because people get angry quite easily, right? Why don't you help me? Well, often the easiest thing to do, the best thing to do for the most peace and happiness in the future, is to do something even though it gets you caught up. I mean, part of that is the practice. It's partly meditation practice, because you are sacrificing, you're letting go of your own comfort, your own desires, your own opinions. You are being patient. You can be mindful doing just about anything. So sometimes you have to let people pull you in, but there are other times where you let people pull you in, where to where you're fixing their problems and they no longer are. That's the point where you can say no. I mean, I think that's the clearest, where people are no longer taking responsibility for themselves. Like when parents dump their kids on us and say, okay, I want you to fix my kid. That's not my job. They're your kids. You are responsible for them. I'm not going to fix your problems. I'm not going to fix their problems. If you want to come and meditate, you come in. Because the point is the kids aren't interested. The kids don't want to come and learn. So I'm not fixing your problems. If the kid comes and says, hey, I want to learn meditation, absolutely, I'm happy to teach you. But there's a line there, you see. When the person doesn't want to, it's like you're working for the person. You become their like daycare almost, but it's not quite daycare. You're fixing the parents' problems. That's not right. I think there's a model there that you can follow to find the line between when it's proper to help and when you actually start doing other people's work for them or working for people. And if you're working for people, you should get paid, right? I mean, that's the point. Is if it feels like this is something I should do out of compassion, that's one thing. If it feels like, man, I should be getting paid for this, then I think you've crossed the line. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. It's probably more complicated than that, but something like that.
When meditating, I often begin to feel my eyes start to flutter about and light comes before my closed eyelids. No matter how hard I try to concentrate on my meditation object, I can always feel my eyes moving and fluttering about. How do I get past this?
It's not anything to get past. It's something to meditate on. These kind of things are common. It's kind of the problem isn't the light or the fluttering. The problem is that you have a problem with it, and you're somewhat obsession with it, and that's what you have to overcome. There's so many things like this. It's common. I mean, the mind obsesses. It likes to obsess. If everything's not perfect, it wants to fix things. So this is want to get past this state. There's nothing to get past. That's reality. It's impermanent suffering and non-self. It's not something you should be at all concerned with. So you have to get to the point where you are just experiencing it, seeing or feeling, frustrated, when you want it to go away, wanting, or so on, when you dislike it, disliking. And you have to have the sense that if this is how I'm going to meditate for the rest of my life, then so be it. It won't be, but you have to let go of it. That's key. Stop worrying about it, fussing about it.
Apologize. I was just setting my phone so it doesn't.
Oh, Charlie was asking specifically about the funeral. Why did I do more than teach? Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned it, but it was mainly because the head monk is, I'm living here with them. Sometimes you have to do things. I mean, I feel like I have to do things that I'd rather not. I mean, I'm protesting against it in my own way. But I'm careful not, like, okay, here's a good example. Perfect example. We got to the lunch today. And we're sitting down and they're bringing food in. And then this woman, I guess the daughter of the man who passed away, comes up with a big piece of paper and says, this is his life story in English. And she comes to me and she says to the head monk, can he say it? Can I have him read this? And I said, no, there's no way I'm reading that. And she said, but it's in English. And then they started talking back and forth in Cambodian. I don't know quite what they were saying. But, he's the one, his English is good. He can say it. And then the monk said, the other monk said something about, oh no, he's leaving and he's going to school. And I said, no, that's not the reason. It's not a monk's job to read some layperson's life story. That's not my job. So I do have things that I would never have done that. There's no way. But there is some, give. Like, for example, that time when we were going to do 3 walks around the place, I didn't really feel comfortable with that. But to some extent, I could just say, okay, now I'm walking. And it was quite peaceful, actually. It was an excuse for me to do a walk in the sun, get some sun, So to some extent, you can think like that. I think you have to be careful, because at the same time, I felt like we were sending the wrong message, giving the wrong impression to people of what monks are, that we're some kind of civil servant who does funerals, like who leads people on these walks around, which I don't think we are. Now, if it had been a monk or something, that's what I asked today. He said, no, we have to go to the crematorium. It's what monks do. I said, what, was he a monk? So he wasn't a monk. I don't feel we have any obligation to do these things. It's not even about having an obligation. It gives people the wrong idea, because there's a monk in Sri Lanka who I lived with, and he refused to go to funerals for this very reason, because he said, this isn't why we ordained. If I were to start accepting these things, I'd never get any meditation done. They'd invite me daily to weddings and funerals and da 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 da, everything. So he refused to do it. And he said, there's a monastery, there's a temple down the road who does them, and so people go to them. And they know not to come to me anymore because I refuse to do them.
Is there a tradition of meditating for when a monk dies, meditating like a kind of a marathon overnight? It was something they had done at Wat Lao in Connecticut. A monk passed away, and there was a full weekend, like a 3-day weekend of meditation for him. I didn't know if that was just something special they did.
Buddhist traditions, if anyone, this kind of question doesn't work. There are no Buddhist traditions like that. There aren't even really many Buddhist traditions. The best way to get as close to a Buddhist tradition is to read the Jatakas, because yes, there is a little bit in there about certain things, like and not just the Jatakas, but this going around something 3 times. There are examples. There are things that did happen, but to say they're a tradition, I mean, the best you could say is they did this in the Buddha's time, because you have an example in the suttas. Like there was this one case where the whole city, the king made a huge, he made this great charity. He invited all the monks, and I guess it was just the monks, but he did some great almsgiving. And then all the people in the city wanted to beat him. And so they all did some even greater almsgiving. And then the king didn't even, and finally, back and forth. And I think finally the people did something that was just, the king had to concede and was unable to compete. I mean, you have stories like this where people did certain things. There are events like that. There's the building of monasteries that you hear about. But traditions like when someone dies, you do this. They followed mostly Hinduism, to some extent. I guess because Buddhism wasn't following Hinduism, they mostly just cut out the rituals. There's not much. There are things like when you offer something to someone, you pour water over your hand. I think it's something like washing your hands of it. But like now it's become, they pour water every time they give. You've seen them pouring the water. Originally, it was when you give something, it's like you shook the other person's right hand and you pour water over your hands. But it was kind of like the water symbolizes washing your hands of something. So there's nothing, not a trace of that thing left when you give something. So I think people would hold their hand out and pour water over their hand. That was a tradition, and Buddhists seem to have done it. But it was because it was a tradition at the time in India.
Oh, that's interesting. I've seen the pouring water. Had no idea. That's
pretty sure that's where. I mean, it's that, and it's this sutta where it says that water, just as water flows down from the mountains to reach the sea, so too when you give some gift, it flows down, and the hungry ghosts are hanging out, are able to get benefit from it as well. That's the yatha varivaha pura paripurinti sakaram, which we always chant. And when we chant that in Thailand, then they pour the water. So it's just become, but it's all made up, and you can see them making it up. Monks start to make these things up. Okay, now we'll do this, now we'll do that. So some of it's good. Like that wouldn't be a tradition. That was just a good idea. This monk died. Let's do a 3-day meditation course. That's awesome. But I would look at that much more as oh, they had this good idea to do that. And that's important because people get so stuck on tradition. And I hear lay people here all the time saying crazy things. Oh, you have to do this. Oh, you have to do that. Like the women at the funeral had to wear white. And once they wore white, they had to keep 5 precepts, which is ridiculous. You all have to keep 5 precepts. All humans have to keep 5 precepts. Right? So when it starts to become tradition, then it's just ritual. You're just doing it because it's ritual. It's much better off when you say, look, this monk died. I've got an idea. Let's do a 3-day meditation course, because that's going to allow us to cultivate wholesome mind states, and we can use that. It's a way of honoring him. It's a way of allowing him a chance to feel happy for our efforts and therefore get benefit from our efforts, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Can you be more specific when you say in the Vinaya?
You missed one. What about the computer one? Are they in order? I've got Ryan asking about tips for being mindful working at a computer.
Bhante, do you have any tips for being mindful working at a computer? Sorry, Ryan.
Again, it's like someone asked yesterday or the day before. There's no tips. You've got to work at it. You've got to do it. There's no secret to it. I mean, you know what mindfulness is. You know how I've explained it in the booklet. If you follow the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, it's quite simple. There's no mystery. You just do it or you don't. You can, as I said, you can find these tricks, but I don't think in the long run they're all that helpful. Maybe they are. Maybe people do. I prefer the more organic approach of not having any trick and just working at it, chipping away until you get better at it. To me, that seems more honest. But sure, if you want, let's download a timer app that goes off every minute and bings, and then you say, oh, okay, there's the timer again. I have to be mindful. I don't know if that would work over the long term. My gut feeling says it may be helpful, but not as helpful as people would think, because you're looking for tricks, and that part of the mind that's looking for an easier way, looking for a boost to the practice, is this lazy part of our mind that doesn't want to just do the practice, right? Doesn't want to try again. And that's all it is trying again. There's so much you have to learn and adjust about yourself before you can become truly mindful. It's about adjusting all these things until you're just trying. You're not in the past. You're not looking for the future.
Can you be more specific when you say in the Vinaya some people disapproved of an arhat not being involved with lay people enough?
I wonder now whether it was actually in the Vinaya. I'm pretty sure it was. So what's the rule? We've got the Sanghadisesa. Sanghadisesa number 13, right? The last Sanghadisesa is probably where you'd find it. But I'm going to get them mixed up. There's lots of different stories, but there's one story, I'm pretty sure it's on Sanghadisesa number 13, where these monks were acting in all sorts of inappropriate ways. Like, there's an example. Yeah, it's got to be number 13, because they would doing things like, well, just sitting around chatting with lay people, flattering them, bringing them things like bringing flowers to lay people, or now we have these bracelets that we give to them, but doing it in such a way, ingratiating themselves with the lay people to the point, and smiling and laughing and carrying on, playing games with the lay people. Like it talks about these things that they were doing, all sorts of inappropriate things. One thing it mentions is bouncing children on their laps. So when they would go to see the lay people, they would pick up the kid, and and that ingratiates you with people. It certainly makes you feel like you're part of the family. And then this arahant showed up, I'm pretty sure it was an arahant, and he did none of these things. So he would walk into the village like this, and then they looked at them and they're like, "Who is this guy? Hello, hey, aren't you going to be friendly?" And he was totally, "If you have something to give, please give it. If not, I'll be on my way." They're like, "What the heck? What kind of a thing to say is that? You're not going to come and sit down and chat with us and tell us who you are, where you're from?" "No, I'm sorry. It's not proper for me to engage in such talk." "What do you mean not proper?" And then they'd be so upset. They'd be upset with this monk who was trying to do the right thing and who was totally in the right. And this happened, and as a result, people spread it. The good monks spread it around that these monks were corrupting. Kula dusaka is the term. Someone who corrupts families. You corrupt them, give them the wrong impression. I mean, I've had this, of course. When people hear that I don't use money, they get angry at me. Lay people think, what kind of a monk are you? We want to give you money, and here you are not accepting our money. How is that right? Right? Like we have an obligation to be the recipients of gifts. There were monks who refused robes. People would give the monks robes, and the monks would say, "I have enough. I have 3 robes already." And nowadays, monks try to tell you that if you do that, you're just the worst of the worst. They say you cannot. Uh, it's not allowed for a monk to reject the offering of a layperson. I mean, it's a convenient excuse. "Oh yes, I have to take. Oh yes, give me more. Oh yes, I'll take it all. I have to. It's against the rules not to," which is horse feathers. It's against the rules to take more than you need. And so refusing is a big part of it. It's an example. I mean, there's so many things like that I've come across where, like the funeral today, if I don't go, if I don't do these things, not to speak badly about the monks. The monks here are great guys, but we have different ideas of Vinaya, and they know it, I know it. We're fine with that. We're all good friends. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm here on the internet going behind their back criticizing them. Yeah, I say it to their face as well.
When you said about giving up bracelets, I was showing my bracelets. I have 2 of those.
Yeah. I mean, my teacher
But I
gives
like
out
them.
my teacher gives out bracelets, and he does a lot of these things, but he's got a sense of the worth of it. The bracelet is useful. There's lots of reasons why it's useful, because it reminds you of the Buddha. It reminds you of the Dhamma, the Sangha. The point is, when monks take this as their practice, they go to people's houses with these things, and this is their thing. But a lot of the reason why I think my teacher does it is just because it's become to the point where people are corrupt and they expect these things from monks. But there are other reasons. People who can't understand the Dhamma, people who are into this kind of thing, you give them something, it makes them feel good, it gives them a reminder, and it sends them on their way, and they're happy. So it is kind of a path of least resistance in a way.
It also reminds me of impermanence because it's made of string and is falling apart. It won't last forever. I frequently feel people will judge me harshly, and this makes me be worried all the time. Could this change with Vipassana meditation?
Absolutely. Worry will go away. You have to think this whole idea of self is just a flaw. It's just a flawed reason. It's a wrong view. The whole idea of you having a self. When you say, "Oh yeah, well, that idea of self is wrong," and then you don't have to worry about people judging you. When you think of non-self, it really helps you overcome that. I mean, that's an attitude that you have to have. But as you start to meditate, your worry will go away, and you'll realize that all there is experience. When other people are judging me, that's just a judgment. It's just an experience. There's no self involved in that experience. You have to open yourself up to things that we would not be able to tolerate normally. People are going to judge me. That's an experience. People are going to hit me with sticks and stones. That's an experience. If they're going to kill me, it's an experience. So absolutely, Vipassana, once you start meditating, that's how you'll approach these things. You won't see a person judging you. You'll see feelings that you have, experiences that you have, and so on.
Do you offer a 1-week meditation course at the New Urban Monastery if one could get up to Hamilton for the week?
Absolutely. We don't offer a 1-week meditation course. We offer a 21-day meditation course for beginners. It's approximately 21 days. You can do it a little bit shorter. But if you want to come for a week, you'll get a start on the course. And then later, maybe you could come for another week and continue the course. But sure, you can come for 3 days. You can come for one night. Tomorrow, Meghna is coming for the night. So she just wants to stay overnight because that's the most time she has. So yeah, you're welcome. As long as we have the space. And if we don't, you can stay in a tent or just stay in the basement. So the new place has a nice basement that's open and people can sleep there and meditate there. It's quite nice. We also have rooms. Is that your battery? Do you have this? Does that work?
It's a little too white for my.
It's a different one.
Yeah, that's okay. Still got 15%.
All right, so let's stop there. We're at 1 hour almost. Thank you, everyone. So tomorrow we will be on, but Monday I think I'm just going to have to skip it because Monday night we have a meeting. I have a meeting, first meeting with the McMaster Buddhism Association, and it starts at 7. And I don't think maybe we'll be done by 9, but because I'm not going to have internet anyway, I think we'll just better skip it. I don't think I could use 3G with this. It's probably too expensive. I mean, it's not too expensive, but it's probably not worth it. Let's just skip a day. Ryan asks, can we come and stay indefinitely to meditate? But that's all the time we have for tonight. So
That sounds like ordaining.
yeah. No, we don't have a time limit. If you want to stay indefinitely, probably won't kick you out unless you're really rude and mean and stuff. Anyway, good night.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Robin.